Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Marc Kate.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 116. We are going to be talking about Clueless, the very scary movie by Amy Heckerling from 1995. You can email us at whattthe, W-H-A-T-T-H-E, at scarythoughts.org. And do you have anything to plug?
I never do.
Okay, well, I do. I just put out an album on my bandmate Andy Connor's. He resurrected his label Tumult. It is an album of sort of damaged, blackened dub techno, sort of late entry into the power ambient world. If any of those words mean anything to you, you're potentially one of the 5 people on planet Earth who cares about the type of music I make.
You're going to need a tape deck too.
It is available on double clamshell cassette, which I am over the moon. It looks like an old books on tape thing that they used to sell at truck stops.
It came out great.
I'm so thrilled. It is the dumbest object that no one will use for its intended purpose. It just looks cool. I would tell you, well, it's on Spotify, it's on Bandcamp for sale, etc. But it is virtually unsearchable because the artist moniker is not my name. It is hashtag 000000, which is the hexadecimal code for black in web design. And so, you know, if you search for hashtag 000000 on one of those platforms, it may or may not turn up.
It's definitely, like, you've picked the worst SEO terminology possible.
Completely. Like, even if you are specifically searching for it on the platform where it's available, it may or may not show up.
You may have as well have named the album Google Search.
Oh, fuck. That. Can I take that?
Yeah, go ahead. Put out Google Search.
That's great.
On 8-track, maybe.
That's great. So in this episode about Clueless, we will have spoken about or are about to speak. What is the verb tense you'd like us to use here?
let's pull the curtain back a little bit. We have already recorded this episode.
And it's great.
It is great. We definitely didn't put it in the ditch and talk about the Barbie movie too much. There's a certain subset of our listener that seems to appreciate the ambling episodes quite a bit more, and this is definitely one of them.
We may or may not have spoken about Oppenheimer.
Yep.
And the Barbie movie.
Yep.
A lot.
I mean, I'm off weed and your tea is lower than ever, so you might feel that in this episode.
I would have thought my tea going down would have improved these episodes considerably, but that's not how it's working.
No. We should get back on drugs of all sort, probably ASAP.
I just read so many psych textbooks now that it's turning my brain to kind of some sort of mush. Like, all I'm capable of doing now is like processing people's trauma and reading about how to process people's trauma. And then I hide in my little studio and make music that barely sounds like music. That's kind of been my life for the last 2 years. And it's turning me into a zombie.
In my brain, it's What About Bob? But the Richard Dreyfuss character is played by Blixa Bargeld.
Oh, fuck. I want to see that so bad.
Anyway, get ready. We do a pretty strong job of trying to talk about all the characters in Clueless without getting too in the weeds. But, you know, that's the show.
And spoilers ahead. Okay, so where do we want to start with this one?
Well, we've been talking about this episode for a very long time.
It's so long that I feel like we had a reason, and I don't remember what it was. And it might have been, hey, it's New Year's Day 2024. Let's do something positive and fun. And that was 3 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things for me is that I've discovered as we've continued covering horror movies over and over and over and over and over again is I'm not like a horror movie completist, like some of the other horror podcasts. Like some people will go see every single horror movie ever because it's just their shit. I like this movie Clueless more than I like any horror movie. And
Same. Yeah. I mean, I've seen Clueless more times than any other movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it quite a few times because the people forget what it was like to watch TV in the 90s, like HBO. You would just catch a movie that was on all the time and you would catch it in pieces, almost like how modern day you see A Christmas Story on Christmas and it's in pieces and you're like,
Right.
you might just watch the getting dressed scene for like 30 minutes and then go off or whatever. So I don't know that I've sat down and watched Clueless all the way through more than 20 times.
Yeah.
But if you count up all that I've seen it, maybe like 50 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of my favorite movie. Yeah, it's up there. I think also you and I were just kind of talking about horror in general, and we were like, I haven't seen any. I feel like we were in a little bit of a trap because we weren't super excited about any horror movies we'd seen recently.
Yep.
But also didn't want to just hate review something because I think we'd both, I don't want to name things, but we'd both seen a couple of horror movies that we were like, yeah, I guess we could review this, but we hated it. And we've done enough Scary Thoughts episodes of just dunking on someone's life's work.
I mean, like,
It's a little tiring.
I feel
after a while.
like our episode on Veronica was like peak hating.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, that doesn't, you know, like Pauline Kael has this line about how people ask her, like, what, you know, when are you going to write a memoir? She's like, well, I've been writing one all along. And I feel like your take on a movie, even your Letterboxd, whatever, if you're a Letterboxd person,
Yeah.
you're sort of actually writing about yourself. You're not really writing. You're like, well, I think this, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm less interested in defining my experience in this world and my articulation of my taste to other people with things that I don't like. I'm more interested in talking about things that I do like. And I like this movie a lot.
Yep.
And I think we're also at the tail end of what was a little bit of a horror renaissance. I think A24 really delivered a lot of really strong stuff. But as horror does, it comes in waves. And there'll be the occasional thing that is really brilliant, like a Titan or something like that. But I think it's the A24 influence has now become formulaic in the way that like the slasher influence was formulaic. And I think that it's getting to be quite stale again.
Totally. And I feel like we started this podcast just right before or right at the escalation of a zeitgeist in horror. And it seems to be waning. It might just be briefly so as it reorients itself. When we decided to do this film, I hadn't yet seen Infinity Pool, but I did sort of feel like I didn't see much in almost a year in horror that like blew my mind. A couple of things, but not really, as opposed to, you know, many of the previous years. There were such incredible high points.
Yeah, I feel like really aligned with Alejandro Jodorowsky when he talks about what he wants to see in a film. He's like, I want to see something I never seen before. You know, and he's talking about some like Japanese horror filmmaker, and he's like, the sword and knife come out from the vagina and kill the man. I never see that before. Like he has this whole thing about it. I was like, yeah, like I want to see something that I've never seen before when I'm watching a horror movie, because to me, like horror at its best is surreal. Or you get something like, I'm kind of always down for horror comedy. Anybody who smokes weed is kind of like like Satanic Hispanics is coming out finally. And I think everybody should fucking see that movie because it's so fun and stupid.
Yeah. Did you see Thanksgiving?
I didn't. I don't like, I just didn't make time for it. I just missed it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the trailer is better than the trailer that inspired it is better than the movie itself.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it made me think a little bit. I haven't seen it, so this is just like a speculation. Is like, you know, like when SNL would have a character that was funny and then they make a whole movie and the whole movie is not that good. Like a notable exception, Wayne's World, that whole movie's pretty good.
Yep.
But there's a lot of like pretty much everything Chris Kattan ever made, you know, like all those movies. That's what it felt like. It's like a joke that got stretched out a little bit. Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's fun enough. So Clueless, I think also what opened the door to Clueless is I really wanted us to cover the Barbie movie because I feel like there is a lot to say about the Barbie movie as framed like a horror movie.
Yeah.
There are so many touchstones that when discussing horror, you can weave into a conversation about the Barbie movie. And we just didn't quite get to it. I think you and I had a had a war over that movie via text going on for like a month.
Yeah, I thought it was.
So
like
we just
not
settled
great.
on Clueless.
Also, Werner Herzog's like little 2-minute comment about how he thinks of he watched like 20 minutes of the Barbie movie and he decided that the Barbie characters are actually existing in hell. And he kind of walks out this whole theory of how the Barbie land is hell. He kind of nailed it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But one of my things that I loved about the Barbie movie is that it reminded me so much of Clueless. And the way that it did is it's just this unapologetic celebration of femme. And it's just a fun comedy. Like they both, there are a lot of overlaps, but for me, that was a significant one.
Yeah. Well, Clueless has the Fast Times at Ridgemont High DNA in it. Like, the director, and it's just a fun 90s movie. And it's basically a fun 90s party movie. And even young kids, like my nephew, he's like 17 or 18, he talks about how much he loves like Clueless, American Pie. Like to him, this idea of a place where you could just go and there's a party and nothing else is interfering with it is like amazing to him. Like it happens, you leave, no one hears about what happened at it. Like maybe one or two people. It's like this weird fantasy. And I think this movie, like just the world of it is so compelling and interesting. It's like when David Lynch talks about like the reason why he falls in love with certain movies like Rear Window is the whole world is really fun. And the world of Clueless is just a blast.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I'm going to confess, I don't think I came to this episode as well armed as maybe you are. I feel like you've been thinking about it harder than I have.
Well, we both read, I think we should mention the book As If.
An Oral History of Clueless. Yeah.
Yeah. Who wrote it?
Jen Chaney. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, so there's kind of like a thing right now where there's all these like oral histories of movies that are kind of interesting. I just read the one about Highlander, and I have the next on deck is I have the one about the making of David Lynch's Dune.
Wow.
The one that it is about Shaun of the Dead is very good if you're into Edgar Wright. I know you don't like him at all, but if you're into those movies, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And perhaps the best of all is the one about the making of Fury Road. It's quite incredible.
I really want to get to that.
I mean, to me, it's the most insane movie that was ever made. Like when you learn more about like how it made and how long it got taken to make. But As If is a really fun book. And if you're into this movie Clueless or like filmmaking in general, I think it's a great book because I like, in some ways, like Hollywood's like an industry town, right? Like just the way Detroit made cars, these people just make movies. And this movie was really just like a lot of people came together to make it. It was just like a crafted together thing. It has like a certain spark of magic, but the people involved were just like teen movie craftsmen. It's just really interesting. And also like the people who, could have been up for the different roles I thought was really interesting. Or like to me, the funniest thing in the book As If is that Paul Rudd auditioned for, what's the black dude's name?
Murray.
Paul Rudd auditioned to play Murray because he didn't pick up that Murray was black when he was reading the script.
You mean, so he wasn't asked to audition?
He wasn't asked to audition.
He showed up and just started reading Murray.
Yeah, because he thought it was like a America's Most White. What was, I don't, just like I guess, I don't know if this word's offensive anymore, but he's like a wigger.
Yeah.
And he thought that was like the character. Like imagine that direction. And I think like Snoop Dogg was attached to be Murray at one point. Like there's just so many different zigs when it could have zagged for this movie. Because it took a couple years to get made.
Oh yeah.
But it's hard to imagine anybody else in these roles at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at, a couple of people who were in this movie really didn't do anything else. Like Christian.
Yeah, he did nothing else.
Nothing else. But like he is so profoundly that role.
Yeah. And it's really a groundbreaking role. Like, I mean, it's the first, I think in As If they say it's like the first openly gay character where it's just not a big deal. Like no other character in the movie cares that he's gay.
Yeah.
It's just like, and the joke is like, and there's no joke at his expense for being gay.
Yep.
Like the joke is that Cher is just completely clueless and she
Yeah.
doesn't get it. Like she doesn't understand it.
It's almost doubled down how much it doesn't matter by when Murray is laughing at them for not realizing that he's gay, and he does the like, Barbra Streisand, Take It Holden, friend of Dorothy.
Yeah.
And he's not making fun of him. He's just using colorful language to describe his gay classmate.
Yeah. And and it's kind of funny. They set it up to where like when he's like using like street language with his girlfriend, like, and he has like the kind of like explanation of why he's doing it. You understand that like all of his hyperbolic language is really intentional and designed to give him a look, and he's thinking about it really deeply. So like it makes like later when he's doing that, you're like, oh, he's like performing this description for her, like for this audience of two. It's pretty funny. And I think about like that character, Christian, it influenced a lot of what I thought was cool. Like when he was into like the vintage car and the old music and like the kind of vintage clothes and stuff like that, it made me like, when that stuff sort of became popular, when you're poor, you go shopping for vintage store stuff or whatever. But it definitely made me, when I was like 14, it put into my head that like having a vintage car was cool, which really influenced a lot of my life. Especially, I never really had a vintage car, but tons of vintage motorcycles.
So do we want to talk about privilege?
No, like that's the best part of this movie, is that it doesn't apologize for any of it.
That's kind of what I was maybe going to go into.
Yeah.
It's like we live in this era where privilege, I live in this culture where privilege is so scrutinized and it is framed as offensive. And I think that is another thing that this movie is delightfully unapologetic about. It's like, this is what's possible with privilege. Mm-hmm. And it's fun.
Yeah. The world of these characters, like, it's such a fairy tale to me. Like, obviously it's based on the Jane Austen Emma book. And at the time, like, their whole existence felt as foreign to me as like an 1800s version of this would have been. Like when you go watch like Keira Knightley as Emma, it feels as distant from reality as this does. And this movie's like beloved by a bunch of different people, like a bunch of different classes of people with a bunch of different like eras. Like there's like hip hop videos that reference it. It influenced like all kinds of different fashion.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, not so much the men's fashion. Like I was thinking the only male character that had any sort of even tangential look that I had seen in person was probably the skateboarder kid. Like the flannel and shorts thing. That's kind of a Louisiana look.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody else, I was like, who dresses like this? This just seems like a music video to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you want to like take Cher to task for her white privilege?
No. It's funny. It's also slightly invisible to me in some ways because I did kind of go to that high school. Not really. I mean, it is really ramped up compared to where I went to high school. But like,
it's what I
went
thought
to high
California
school with
was like.
Yeah, I went to high school with really, really rich kids who drove, outrageously expensive cars, and yeah.
Well, I mean, you also like Cher's politics as such are like sort of like progressive values at their best. She like, especially like the famous Haiti scene. Like she's talked about like. Making more room at the table and it's just fine. And there's no RSVP on the Statue of Liberty. That's pretty in line with like how a lot of people think now. And it's like delivered sweetly. And, her idea is like, there's plenty of resources to go around. And so if we just make some effort for these other people we didn't expect, then it's going to be fine. And I think that's a fucking great message,
So is the message that you can argue your way out of lower grades.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's how college is now with grade inflation.
Yes. It legitimately is. And to the point where if you want to not do that, like you are doing your children a disservice by not doing that because your protest doesn't result in anything other than your children having lower grades than everybody else.
Yeah. I also like the idea that the father is sort of training her for the real world in a kind of way. She asked him if he's mad that she talked her way into the grade. And he's like, I couldn't have been happier if it was based on real grades. I think that's rad. That character's kind of weird because he's he's the most like Jane Austen-y character. He's like this distant rich father that's just making money off camera, kind of.
Yeah.
What do you think about like the ex-stepbrother relationship? I think even today it feels weird.
The Paul Rudd
Yeah.
character. It's weird. But
Yeah.
I kind of appreciate that there was no effort to round it off, to somehow, like,
Yeah.
they could have changed it.
They could have.
They could have made him just somehow more distant.
He could have just been some guy working for her dad.
Right.
Like he could have been like an intern that comes on camera or whatever. It's kind of weird. And, and he's a few different characters from Emma compressed, to kind of make it happen. But it's such a weird choice. The only other time you see it sort of handled similarly is in the Royal Tenenbaums.
I don't remember.
Margot Tenenbaum and Richie Tenenbaum, she's adopted. It's a little more extreme there because they're brother and sister, and she's adopted, and then they fall in love, and then Royal Tenenbaum is like, it's frowned on, but who cares,
Yeah.
But like the fact that like first cousin marriage is so common in the world in general, like the stepbrother stepsister thing is not really that crazy.
Yeah.
Although it does feel weird.
It does.
Yeah, to me it does anyway. Maybe it's just judgmental.
It does, but I kind of appreciate that adds this weird tension to the narrative. Like, I don't know what expression to use other than it's kind of a head scratcher.
To me also it adds to the fairy tale-ness of it a little bit because it makes it seem like Romanovs or something, like these intermarrying royals.
Yeah.
I wonder how this plays in England. They're probably just like, fair enough, mate.
What?
It was all the inbreeding of the royal family.
Yeah.
The Paul Rudd character, I had never seen the word Nietzsche before.
Oh.
And this is how I found out about that whole thing.
Oh,
like I was like, what is he reading? And I found that book. I had like the exact same edition of it. And I remember reading it and being like, what the fuck is this? Like when I read it, I had no preparation for it. So like I read it probably when I was like 15.
Yeah.
And it had an influence for sure.
Wow.
But that's 100% where I got into that. Probably where I got into philosophy was because of this movie.
You're like, that guy who's sitting in direct California sunlight in all black. What book is he reading?
I just felt like he was like, at that point, I'm already wearing all black in Louisiana.
Totally.
So the idea of like a fellow traveler on screen reading some book. And like, whenever somebody reads a book on screen in a movie, I'm always kind of interested in what it is because I feel like it's a very intentional choice by the director.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so brain dead tonight. I apologize.
Man, this is like your magnum opus.
I know. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm gonna do the thing where you like get up to read your poetry and you go like, I just wrote this morning and and like I am so fucking fried from school.
Yeah, well, that's why we haven't had an episode in a while.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say about that scene in particular, or that character, is I love that it is Dion, a high school student who sees right through his bullshit, where he goes, oh, is he going through his maudlin post-adolescent phase? I can't remember how she phrases it, but she like, the high school student like sees from a mile away that this college guy's trying too hard and is like trying an identity on.
Yeah, man, Stacey Dash really should have been a bigger star.
Yeah.
Like because...
Well, I mean, she did the series and it ran for a while. Like,
well, I mean, the series is kind of like, I don't know, like back then when you were attached to TV was like a real fail.
True.
It was kind of going back, it was before like prestige TV, and so I think it was sort of, especially because they got all these like also rans to be in the show with them. And I never saw the show, but according to Asif, the book,
fine.
it was like it was a fine thing.
Yeah.
That character is so good and smart. Like when you talk about like, I mean, there's all this conversation about like representation and how there aren't characters that like act intelligently on screen or like this happened, and it's weird to me that as well received as this movie is, like things didn't come from it. Like when you hear all these people talking about like, I just wish we didn't talk about anything. There could just be different people existing together. Like that's this movie, nobody's spotlighted. There's no moment where it's like, like in the Marvel movies where it's like, okay, ladies, let's go kick ass. Like there's none of that. These characters are just all good and fun and strong.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just such a goofy movie. I mean, it's really not, it's not Citizen Kane, as they say, but I think it might be as enduring.
Yeah. Something that's also kind of weird about it is I could imagine you could watch the whole thing, and a few days later, if someone, for the first time, and if someone's like, did you like Clueless? Yeah, it was great. What was it about? A rich girl and Paul Rudd. Like the plot is really not.
Yeah.
But which speaks to how strong the characters, the scenes, all of it is. It's just sort of, it's not a slice of life movie, but it does a similar thing where just based strictly on the dialogue and the performances, it doesn't really need to have much plot or cinematography or the soundtrack has some moments, but it could be better.
Well, I mean, the soundtrack to me is just like totally of its time.
Yep.
And it's the only song I think that people were Hollywood's, I mean, the Boss Tones thing was such a big deal at the time. And would that be the band that those kids were going to see at that time? Maybe.
I would imagine no, but it's what they could get. It's like the Undertones played at my high school prom. It's, it's not because everybody was into them. It's just because they could be got.
Yeah. It's funny in the book, as if they talk about the big miss of Just a Girl, like how that was should have been the single, like, because no doubt to me, like, that was the band of this time for this type of scene of people, and she's like this movie, Gwen Stefani is still kicking around as a style icon.
Yeah, for sure.
Not so much Alicia Silverstone. She's kind of really fallen off.
I really wonder about that. And I wonder if it's...
It's 100% veganism. It turns you gray.
Well,
makes you mentally ill.
I mean, Dion went full Christian. She went full...
I know. Stacey Dash really went off the rails. She was running the right-wing grift.
Yeah. You know what? Get your money however you can.
I guess.
I think it might be, and this is not a nice thing to say, but I wonder if Alicia Silverstone has the breadth as an actor to have gone and done other things.
I don't know. Like, I mean,
it sometimes happens, like someone just, they are exactly perfect for a role. Mm-hmm. And then Hollywood doesn't quite know what to do with them next.
Also a time too, like sometimes an actor can become really like part of an epoch. And, she's like the Aerosmith videos and all that stuff. Like it's very like feel of late 90s. But, according to our Bible on this episode, as if she was a trooper, she's on screen every single time. She has something like 80 different outfit changes.
Yeah.
She had all of her lines. Was a super pro. Like that was one of the reasons why they chose her, was because she's so good at like actually like memorizing lines and shit, which, she's a child star at this time. And like, look at the crop of morons we have now. Like,
so she's sort of the Tom Hulse of the 90s, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Who do you think's like, I guess Paul Rudd's the most enduring star out of this whole thing, right? He's the one who made it out.
Yeah. Although he's kind of, I don't know where he's at right now.
Well, he was Ant-Man a few times.
Oh, Jesus. I'm sorry. Yeah. I completely, we should cut that out. Of course he was.
Also, he's one of my favorite movies, Role Models.
Role Models is pretty funny.
It's really like the thing I love about Role Models the most is my wife worked for Red Bull when that movie came out, and she was working at Red Bull, and there were just so many jokes like this tastes like fucking whatever, like a gasoline piss, like, and that character Stifler was like every single person she worked with at Red Bull. Oh my god! Well, I mean, he's not Stifler in that Role Models, but
the guy,
and then the LARP kid, I really was like uncomfortably familiar with that lifestyle. All right, what else we got here? I can't remember what my Kanye West theory was, but it was one of those things. I was like waking up in the morning and I had this like epiphany that as Cher's mother died in a freak plastic surgery accident, and she went upon her path of being kind of a good person trying to help people out, and then Kanye West's mother died in a plastic surgery accident, and it put him. Is that true? Yeah. And it put him on this path, this dark path. And I'm like I'm wondering what he would think about this movie,
Okay,
and if he
so
relates.
this is
to
a
Cher
Marvel
at all.
movie.
Yeah.
This is the light and the dark of the same origin story.
Yeah, like Kanye is like the multiverse, like dark version of Chernowitz.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a terrible loosey-goosey theory. It goes nowhere.
No.
This is like dorm room stoner theory right here. It's like, hey man,
You're off weed, aren't you?
yeah, I'm like, it's been like 2 months since I smoked any weed.
I'm so sorry. How's that going?
I don't know.
Are you
It's
back?
like,
Are you back doing to TM or?
no. Still working out. Still extremely aggressive lately. Just putting all that energy into work. Really,
Is the anger because you just have peak testosterone going?
Yeah, peak testosterone from just only eating meat and ice cream.
So you're not keto.
No, I'm pretty low carb, I guess, but like basically a balanced macro approach. Like a pound and a half ribeye and a pint of my favorite types of ice cream like hits my macros perfectly and my calorie needs perfectly. My blood.
I love you, but that is the stupidest shit I've ever heard.
Dude, I would say that I'm maintaining strength. I can still do like 27 pull-ups.
Yeah, but you're going to get scurvy and your bones are going to shatter.
No way, dude. There's I have an orange every once in a while. I got some orange. You don't need that.
Problem solved, I suppose.
I mean, I would say based on body comp and my last physical, things are doing great. Like my blood test numbers were better than they've ever been.
Really?
Yeah. The worst part about not being
I ate pizza and a cinnamon roll for dinner.
Yeah. What's up, Cinnabon?
That's why I can't think straight.
I mean, the other thing too is like it's all calorie in, calorie out, basically, right? Like at the end of the day. And that just hits my calories perfectly. And the pint of ice cream and the steak, I feel completely satiated from that. I don't feel like snacking the rest of the day. It's like pretty much what I like to eat. It's my two favorite things. I just eat them all the time in a very autistic manner.
That's bizarre. I mean, I think that's completely fucked, but and I'm pretty judgmental of you. But I think that I would legitimately at this point pay someone who could get me to stop being a vegetarian, because doing it on my own is not working.
It's really easy to not be a vegetarian.
No, because I'm not phobic of meat, but it's a similar like unconscious, like it's just not food to me. Like it's legitimately not food. The TV show Friends?
No, like they say it's not food, it's friends. That's the PETA line.
About animals. No, I don't even care. It just I've not eaten meat for so long that I can't think about it as food, and I think my life would be improved if I ate meat once in a while.
I don't know I mean, who knows? I don't know. Who could say? I know I feel strongly about the way I eat. But if you want to go try and get the meat sweats at Fogo de Chao, we should go for it.
Say the meats.
The meats, when you eat a lot of meat,
yeah.
Like because there's I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically like your body has to burn calories to burn a lot of like protein, and so you start sweating a lot. So it's actually like you just start dripping sweat if you eat too much protein or too much meat. They call it the meat sweats.
That's gross.
And Fogo de Chao is a Brazilian steakhouse where you have the coin and you have it on green, and they just keep bringing meat to you on skewers, and you just eat until you can't, and then you turn the coin over on red, and then they stop bringing you food. It's like a one price whole thing. You just pay like $35 or $40 or whatever, and they just keep bringing you steaks. And like there's tactics, right? So they have all these sides.
Just keep bringing me oranges.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about diet less than ever.
Less?
Yeah, less than ever.
Well, you're kind of doing the like I have one suit and that's all I wear every day.
Yeah.
It simplifies things.
Yeah. Like I cook like the same ribeye in the same skillet with the same butter and garlic sauce concoction.
Why ice cream?
Just like ice cream.
Yep.
I'm kind of like a gnarly sweet tooth. If I were to improve my diet, I would probably just go like dump all the sugar and just go straight carnivore diet.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's super boring.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing we talked about was like that they just kind of don't make movies like this anymore. like teen comedy movies. I mean, there are teen comedy movies, but they're not. They don't seem to be as enduringly popular. Like, can you think of one from the last 20 years?
Movie?
Yeah.
I'm not especially paying attention, and I think I didn't come prepared to answer that question. There's got to be some. I mean, as enduring, who knows? I'm a little unclear on how much Clueless was. It was sort of immediately embraced, but its cult status, I feel like it took a while.
It's weird. Like, I don't know that I would call this a cult film. Because it's kind of like a normie film.
Yeah.
Like so many people, but it has like it's interesting in that it has a cult-like following from normies. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see that.
Yeah, it's just like I mean, I guess it's just like a perennially popular movie. I mean, those things happen, like fuck Forrest Gump, for example, or whatever.
Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Forrest Gump.
What did you think about the fashion in this film at the time?
So I didn't see it when it came out. I saw it many years later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And you'd have been in your 20s when you defined it.
I was in my 20s, and I was when it came out, I was fully like, I don't watch television, you know, I don't know what's on the radio. Sorry. Back then, people listened to the radio. I was completely detached from pop culture for a number of years, and it seemed exactly what I would not be interested in. And then I finally saw it, maybe 6 years later, not that long after, really. And it totally blew my mind. And the fashion just seemed like ridiculous and fun.
Yeah. I saw it. I was like the age of these characters when I saw it. And there's something about when you see a teen movie when you're a teen, it doesn't teach you how to be, but because you're seeing people like you on the screen, especially if you're a white dude and you're seeing white characters or whatever.
Yeah.
There's something about like the age. You're like, oh, these kids are going to a party. I should be going to a party. Like, I think the idea that these characters all had sort of like high art pretensions.
Yeah.
Like all of them are sort of like sophisticated in weird ways. Like I think that really influenced me. Like I was like, oh, I will have some of this pretension, please.
Totally.
Like there was something about it that seemed like I obviously wasn't rich like they were, but I was like, oh, I could read that stupid Nietzsche book.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. Yeah. And I was older than them, so I'd already taken classes in Nietzsche by that time. Yeah. I'm thinking back to what you were saying about kids today watching this movie, and there are these events like going to a party, and there's it's not monitored, it's not documented, and we spoke about that kind of thing with Stranger Things and the It movies. These earlier eras where kids had freedom that they don't have now, and I'm trying to think that at least when. Okay, I'm thinking out loud a little, but when I was young and I watched movies from, let's say, the 70s and 60s and 50s, I don't think the kids seemed like they were leading more interesting, better. Like there was nothing I was envious of, like nothing. I mean, I guess when I was a kid, there was certain things about youth culture that happened in the late 60s that seemed cool, but that wasn't high school. That was adults, late teens, early 20s fleeing. So that's different. That's not high school. That's not hanging out with your friends after school. I can't think of, you know what I'm getting at? Can you relate to that? Like when you were a kid and you were watching movies from previous decades, is there anything that looked appealing about them, or not appealing, but some aspect of it that seemed like it was better?
Yeah, I think so. Like to me, all of the John Hughes movies and basically every teen comedy movie took place in California.
Yeah.
And California to me and Louisiana and like the suburbs of New Orleans seemed fucking cool. Like you'd watch it. It just seemed so appealing.
Yeah.
And I think I was like, kind of naive when I watched a lot of those movies, and I didn't realize it was like Hollywood's idea of like teens. I just kind of felt like it was like how it was someplace out there, you know. And it seemed like really, I never like made any sort of like effort to be like it, because Louisiana has this whole thing where it's like it's its own thing and it kind of shits on anything that isn't it. And so like there's nobody like trying to wear like Ocean Pacific or whatever and like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it didn't really, you just didn't see it. So it felt really exotic, but there were also teens having like, heartache and problems with the teachers and all this stuff. And like, I loved comedy. So any of the funny movies, I all those lines would come into my friends' dialogue. We would mimic that stuff. And then Dazed and Confused came out when I was in high school. So it gave me this sort of like weird sort of like adjacent interest in 70s stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my mom and my dad, they were all about the 70s, and they like, so there were like a lot of artifacts of the 70s around my house, and Louisiana felt kind of behind. So even in the early 80s, it had like a 70s vibe. So I felt like when I would watch a movie, even a horror movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that, the 70s felt more like the world I was living in.
Yeah.
Like the look of, just because like looking at my mom and dad and their like 70s white ass collar shit that they wore.
However, one distinction I would make is that Dazed and Confused wasn't made at the time, and teen movies like Dazed and Confused is fun. Mm-hmm. Those kids are having fun, but teen movies in the 70s are not fun.
Well,
they're like My Bodyguard and Over the Edge, and like they're really dark and like raw and tough. Yeah,
you kind of like Other People, like that type of shit. It was like a drama. It was like
I barely remember that one.
But like when I'm actually like totally mixing this up. When I think about 70s movies and fun, I'm thinking about Burt Reynolds.
Not a high school movie.
But to me though, like, I mean, obviously not a high school movie, but like Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, all that shit was like the mayhem sort of vibe. It has like, I guess I sort of like in my mind, like conflated the mayhem of those films with the mayhem of like zany kid movies.
Right.
It has the same sort of like comedy vibe.
I guess Meatballs, was Meatballs 70s?
Yeah, no,
81 maybe.
Early 80s. Yeah. But that's another thing too, is like the really early 80s, like teen movies were really like weird, like raunchy, horny movies, which is a little bit different.
Little Darlings.
Yeah, it's a little different than like Porky's.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was like 11, 12 when the Tits and Zits movies were happening, and those are the ones I somehow was able to rent. I don't know if my parents knew or not, but yeah, I saw a lot of those. Spring Break, Hard Bodies, Porky's 2 I saw for the first time in Paris.
So good, so international of you.
It's so weird.
What's funny about this, I mean, it really was like the peak era of gratuitous tits.
Yep.
I mean, fucking Airplane, which is PG, has a full frontal boob scene. Like I bet people were mad in the Bible Belt about that. They just go rent this a PG comedy at the local cinema rental place. What about the legacy of Brittany Murphy? That's like a topic.
Oh yeah,
Ty.
She's so good in this movie. Well, I mean, everybody is, but she's amazing in this movie.
I think like is one of the things I thought about her. To me, like at the time, I thought she was the most attractive character in the movie. Like I was like, she's so hot, and I think really one of the early like alt girls on screen, kind of, because she has her dyed hair and her like flannel. So she's sort of, as Monique might say, giving grunge or whatever people serving grunge, realness. And I remember thinking that they made her lame. I was like, she was. I thought she was cuter before the makeover,
right? And
then she kind of returns to it. She sort of like synthesizes those two things at the end, I think, which is the classic hero's journey, I guess.
Which is different from Ali Sheedy's character in The Breakfast Club, who gets a makeover and she gets the wrestler.
What a terrible. Although wrestling's cool, but I mean, what a terrible.
Well, he's not cool.
No, Emilio.
Just because he's a wrestler.
I know. It's funny though. Like thinking about the dominance now. Wrestling is kind of having its moment right now. Like it's more popular amongst young girls than ever before. Like people,
Really?
yeah, it's like it's become a huge and growing sport. Like it went from being like probably not in the Olympics to being huge. Like you can't do jujitsu without wrestling now.
Yeah.
That
Huh. When you say girls, do you mean women or do you mean girls?
like high school.
High
girls.
school.
Yeah, it's become
Really?
like yeah. Part of it, I think, is like there's been some really positive like UFC fighters that have come up through like the Olympics and stuff like that. There was at 10th Planet in Oakland, I cannot remember her name, but she was like the female gold medalist from America in wrestling. She taught a seminar and it was like all these jiu-jitsu girls from all over the Bay Area came to it. It was like pretty popular. Yeah.
Did you watch the movie Bottoms?
No.
The like high school girl fight club? Mm-mm. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
How was it?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
See, I don't.
I really wanted it to be better. I think there's a bit of it that is maybe lost on me because I'm not that age or remotely close to that age.
Yeah.
I generally really like high school movies, almost no matter what.
You like hanging around high schools, huh, Mark? A little weird. A little weird.
But Bottoms, I didn't particularly enjoy, and I did feel like maybe there was a bit of, because I'm not if I was in high school, this might be fun. If I was a teen girl, this might be fun, but it's actually like not as smart as it could have been.
Yeah. Did you see Cobra Kai? That's another teen.
I tried. I generally, not a total rule, but I'm generally turned off by the whole, like, we're going to make the villains into the good guys, whether it's the Disney Evil Queen makeovers or Cobra Kai. It's just a move that I find kind of tiresome.
It's very postmodern academic.
No, it's just, well, I mean, fair enough, but it's actually kind of visceral.
Yeah.
Like, especially with TV shows. Like, you know, I've said this 100 times, like, there are no rules, but generally for TV shows, it's hard if I don't really want to spend, like, I'll spend 2 hours with shitty people in a movie. Generally, I don't care. But if I'm going to go hour after hour with a bunch of irredeemable assholes, it just wears me down, and I just don't care.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I feel like Johnny Lawrence is a great character. He's, especially in the show. Like the idea of him being like essentially this, I mean, they do redeem him. Obviously, he's the hero, to your point, but he's so out of his time. Like there's just like, I think a lot of the humor that is at him being sort of this like teleported into now character is pretty funny because I don't know, like I liked those movies so much as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I wish karate worked like that. I wish you could like just jump kick someone in the face, and I wish movie fighting was how fighting really was, and you could just go train in a dojo like that.
You just punch the air for 2 years and then
and then
take on bullies.
Or you could just have like a crazy like school-wide karate gang fight, you know. Did you ever listen to that podcast that I sent you about the Clueless closets?
Yes.
The attempt to make it?
Was that a 99% Invisible episode?
No, it was some other design podcast. But it was like, it's funny that piece of technology still has not been conquered.
Yeah, you might want to explain this.
Yeah, so in the beginning of the film, Cher is picking her wardrobe with a computer, and it's screening across, you know, it's basically making her outfit for her. And people since then have tried to make similar programs for their closets, you know, but the problem, and it's basically like basic machine learning, which is kind of interesting, you know. It requires like meta tags for each of the outfits, and it, you know, so a shirt might be yellow or plaid or Western or what, and you would use algorithms to put these outfits together. And the real problem is most people just don't have enough clothes to make it work.
Yeah,
that's the problem, or that the meta tags are not diverse enough to create really actually interesting kind of ensembles. But I thought the thing that was the most interesting about the podcast is the two people who had gotten closest to it, they had just gotten a lot of clothes. They went to like a thrift store or something like that and just filled up their closets, and they were like, we're going to make it work. And they let the computer just dress them, and it's essentially just randomizing outfits. And the fact that their friends think that they're super stylish, I thought was really interesting. It was like they've like outsourced all the decisions of their wardrobes to algorithms, and it's essentially random. There's not any sort of real machine learning going on there, which made me think, which reminds me of how Tyler Durden is dressed in the book Fight Club. All of his clothing comes from lost and found bins at gyms. And it's funny how they translate that character sort of has his own style in Fight Club. I mean, I think that character is supposed to look terrible, but because Brad Pitt will always look cool in whatever he's wearing, those outfits are just like super good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we've hit Forrest Gump and Fight Club. So
man.
We're back.
Yeah, here we are, back to the standards.
The podcast is called Articles of Interest.
Yeah.
The Clueless Closet is the episode.
Yeah. Nice. I thought that the Ken characters in Barbie, when they go off the rails, had a very like Tyler Durden look.
Oh.
Because they're wearing like cowboy pants, a fur coat, gloves, a gold chain. I thought that part of the movie, like when the Kens take over, is probably the best part of that movie.
Yeah, most men do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on. Should we just talk about the Barbie movie now?
I kind of want to.
Oh, let's talk about let's have a secret Barbie movie episode. The old bait and switch. Talking about this Clueless episode for years. It's going to be our magnum opus, and we just ended up talking about Barbie. So you love the Barbie movie. I didn't totally love it.
Like so deeply. And I've only seen it once, and I remember it pretty fucking well. Like it spoke to me and resonated with me quite a bit.
I saw it twice, and the first time I watched it, I was just not in the mood for it.
Yeah.
But there were jokes in it that were so good that I was willing to watch it again. And when I watched it the second time, I came to appreciate it a lot more.
Huh.
Yeah. It has my favorite line that I've heard in a movie in years was like, "Here, let me play guitar at you."
It's really good.
That's like I laughed so goddamn hard. And Kate McKinnon I think Kate McKinnon is like the female. Am I saying her name right?
I think so.
Yeah. I think she's like the female Jim Carrey.
Huh.
Like, and like, obviously they're different comedians with different sort of sensibilities, whatever. But what she does is something that Jim Carrey does, which is she'll strike a pose, and the way she's just looking in the pose, like she freezes, and it's like a punchline. Like her movements are like punchlines, especially in the role of Weird Barbie.
Yeah.
And just the character design of Weird Barbie is so good. It reminds me of Delirium in Sandman. Just it's always different, always changing. It seems like a totally chaos character.
We might need to do a Barbie episode after all. It's funny. I mean, since we're already drifting,
can't we just do it now and just call it a day?
Well, we can at least talk about that. Originally, you wanted to do a Barbie versus Oppenheimer episode, and then you were really advocating that this should be a formalized
formal
debate.
Speech and debate, yeah.
And we would ask
Parliament
someone
rules
to come and moderate.
Yeah.
And then it would be Monique and I versus you, and
no, it was me and Monique versus
on Team Oppenheimer.
So no, I wanted to do it like forensic rules style, where like you have this house believes that Barbie is the superior movie to Oppenheimer and should win all the Oscars this year. And then you flip a coin, and you have to take the side that whatever side, you know.
Yeah. I did speech and debate in high school, so familiar with. Sorry, I was thinking about something I want to talk about, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Not
Palestine.
Close. So we ended up not doing it. You and I just sort of.
We just got busy. It's like a heavy lift for just a joke that like 8 people are going to care about.
Yeah, and then the further you get away from like Oppen Barbie or Barbieheimer or whatever, the less it's relevant. I thought Oppenheimer was not that impressive.
Man, you could not be more wrong about that. That movie is incredible.
So there's a template, and I would just call it important movie template, and Oppenheimer follows it to the T. So it is obviously very well made, but I've seen that movie before. So it's historical drama with men in suits saying very impassioned things about important world events. Oliver Stone made a bunch of them. The Untouchables is one of them. It's actually a sloppy as fuck movie. The screenplay is
wrong,
so
so
meandering. Aside from what we know about him as a person and his journey to building the bomb, all the extra stuff in the movie is really boring and stupid.
You mean the most important shit that ever happened?
No, I'm talking about his personal life and the whole secondary plot. Like, actually, the last, 30 minutes of the movie is completely irrelevant and goes nowhere, and I don't care.
Man, I don't know. Well, the last 30 minutes has like one of the stone coldest scenes ever. Like, I love when Emily Blunt doesn't shake the other scientist's hand. Like, she crosses her hand because it's the guy that like betrayed him.
Yeah.
And she's like, you shook his hand. And like the look on her face is like, give her the Oscar.
Well, because she's a good actor.
Yeah. I think also the fact that everything's done in camera, including the nuclear blast, is pretty insane. Like, there's no CGI in that movie. There might be some color correction, but it's all like filmed on film.
Well, Barbie, also practical effects.
Yeah, practically useless.
What?
No, I know. The two things that I really like when I first watched Barbie that I didn't like at all. One, Will Ferrell's not funny in it. How do you make a movie where Will Ferrell's not funny?
He's not always funny.
But he is capable of being like the funniest that a human can be.
Yeah,
Step
maybe.
Brothers.
Maybe.
I mean, like the balls on the drum set. I mean, fuck, dude. It's like the funniest thing I've ever seen. The dart in the neck scene in Old School. Like all of Talladega Nights.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
Or like every single time he suited up as George Bush. I mean,
I don't remember that.
oh my God, his George Bush shit was the funniest thing of all time to me, anyway.
Yeah.
But like, he's just not that funny in this film, and
Yeah,
like
that's fair.
And I think the other thing that kind of bothered me, I didn't grow up playing with Barbie, so who knows or whatever, but I thought the exposition of explaining everything was super fucking irritating. Like if you watch G.I. Joe and like Storm Shadow just jumps on the screen or whatever, they just let the 8-year-old in your brain who played with that toy for 100 years go, oh, fuck, it's Storm Shadow. Or like in the Marvel films, you'll have some completely marginal thing happen in the background.
Yeah.
And everybody dissects it. This movie, every single character, they're like, this is the earring cannon, blah, blah, blah. There's like an explanation of it. And I think it treated the audience kind of like they were sort of dumb, maybe.
For me, it felt like an interesting framing device that mirrored TV commercials for products. So introducing a product and explaining what it is.
I mean, that's a generous take.
No, I think one of the biggest criticisms is just an advertisement for Barbie. Like, yeah, sometimes it literally is. It's awesome. Like they take it really far. I also think, as far as the Oppenheimer versus Barbie thing, I mean, I did like Oppenheimer, just not that much. And that I felt it was sort of a cookie cutter film in a lot of ways. There is no template for Barbie. There is nothing like Barbie. We can, you can look at some of the movies that, holy shit, what's the director's name? Oh my God. Greta Thunberg. That she sort of had the cast.
The girl who doesn't like cars? Greta Thunberg?
Yeah. Didn't she direct this movie? Didn't she direct Barbie?
How dare you steal my life with plastic made from oil?
Oh, God. So, there were a bunch of movies that were inspirations to Barbie, like probably Clueless, Umbrellas of Cherbourg, probably Jacques Tati films, whatever. There is nothing like Barbie. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It completely wrote its own rules for how to approach cinema. Whereas Oppenheimer, I feel like I have completely seen this movie. It just happens to be about Oppenheimer and not some other important man in American history grappling with his inner demons. Like I've seen it before.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like the thing about Oppenheimer to me was like, there's nothing that's not great in that movie. Every performance is great. Every costume is great. Every piece of cinematography, like choice, is incredible.
Sure.
The music rules. The subject matter is like, to me, it's like, I mean, I'm since I knew about nuclear bombs, it's been like a thing I've thought about. Like I probably think about like nuclear war a couple times a day, like, and I have since I was 10, whatever.
Yeah.
The Ken fight I thought was brilliant.
Yep.
Like just the cinematography of it. I mean, I thought it was like 300, but with Ken calls. I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Gosling was excellent in it.
Sure.
I mean, and you know, there's all this like talk about him getting the Oscar nom or whatever. I thought he was the best performance in the whole movie. You know, and unfortunately, I think like Margot Robbie like does a great job, but her job is to be the boring Barbie. So she's sort of like in the way that in a Batman movie, Batman Who Gives a Fuck, it's all about the Joker or Bane.
Right. Nobody's favorite character on the Muppet Show is Kermit.
Right. Yeah. You have to have Kermit. Kermit has to hold it down, but you know, Gonzo or Animal or Fonzie, or of course Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the movie also did like a pretty good job of like being of the political moment, making fun of the political moment. Different people of like all the different eras of feminism had a hot take that seemed to like make sense with the movie, and I thought that was like kind of a neat feat of the film.
Totally. Yeah, that's definitely something I really appreciated about it, is that we're in this moment where anything you do is there to be criticized, and everybody's got their negative, shitty, hyperbolic, political hot take on everything. And this movie could have been this really one-dimensional feminist,
like the Marvel movie, the Ms. Marvel or whatever. Like that movie sucks.
Ms. Marvel,
or like the new one, the one with Captain Marvel that was like all the female superheroes. It was just really
the three. Yeah,
it was like really that, or like I haven't seen the Madam Web one, but apparently that's the worst movie that's ever been made.
Oh, I have to see it now. But any sort of political position it feels like it takes Barbie movie, it undoes.
Yeah.
So it's always sort of like shifting its position. I feel like I'm talking like Daniel Caffeine right now. It's always sort of like undermining its own rhetorical positions.
Yeah. Well, and the best part is like it completely shuts down like the red pill He-Man woman hater. Like to like critique this movie on those terms is to be a buffoon. Like it's so absurdly fucking stupid. And people tried, you know, there was a lot of like, this movie's woke nonsense. It's like, dude, look at yourself.
Yeah.
Like come on. Like
it's brilliant.
You fell for the trap.
Yeah. It's great. So Clueless.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you get a Barbie movie without Clueless.
No, for sure.
End scene.
You, via text, had something about shares neoliberal values. And do you remember this?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it with the Haiti thing. Like I think
guess.
she's like, you know, before neoliberal values became like a bad word, I think, you know, she represents like what you would like, you know, for example, you're going to have rich people. Like you're just going to have them
Forever.
How should they behave in the world? Like as Jesus said, the poor will be with you always. What follows is they're going to be non-poors that will be with you always. And like,
you sure know your book.
You know, Bible college. But like how would you want these people to act? You know, like you almost would prefer them to be futzing around with the relationships rather than trying to run things. You know, like I think it would be a better world if billionaires just built weird yachts than tried to like fix society.
Which, have you read Rob Henderson's memoir right now? Rob Henderson's the one who coined the term luxury beliefs. And he just put out a memoir about growing up in the foster care system and then how he ended up going from foster care to, was it Yale or Princeton or Stanford? Maybe all three. He sort of did this impossible thing and speaks to when he first started going to, I believe it was Princeton, but forgive me for forgetting which Ivy League college he went to, that he realized how much he wasn't just there to learn what he was there to learn, but to learn how to be that person. All of his classmates just had this entirely foreign outlook on life that privilege gave them, and he had to learn what that even is. Yeah. Reminds me of another movie that we could have covered in the last year, which is
Saltburn.
Saltburn.
Man, that movie was boring as fuck, man.
Well, it wasn't exciting, but I thought it was pretty fucking rad. Anyway, when I first started talking about that, I had some clever way to tie it to Clueless. It is long gone.
Yeah, I don't know.
Privilege. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember, like, have you ever read Howard's End?
E.M. Forster?
Yeah.
No, I think didn't that get made into a movie by Merchant Ivory?
Yeah. But it's a great book. I mean, for whatever reason, people don't read E.M. Forster anymore. But like all of his books are incredible. But there's a the main plot is kind of similar to Ty's journey. Like basically, it's about a lower class character, this guy who sort of wants to better himself. And so he goes to the opera, and while he's at the opera, he leaves his umbrella in the umbrella stand or whatever, and a rich woman just grabs an umbrella because she's like, any umbrella's fine. And so he follows her because that's his fucking umbrella and he can't afford another one, you know?
Yeah.
And so he ends up being like, that's my umbrella. And she's like, that's very weird of you to follow me, but and they start up a conversation. And basically, she sort of tries to elevate him up into her society, and everybody around her warns them that like the classes just can't, they're not compatible. And then in Howard's End, it actually does destroy him. Like he ends up dying because of like,
Oh, I have to read this book.
it's a great book. Yeah. He like impregnates the woman that originally stole the umbrella. Like it's a whole thing. It's a great book. But the lesson to me from that book is always like, don't hang out with rich people. You're gonna get fucked up. And have you ever partied with really rich people, like a drug party? It's weird,
not
right?
drug party, but
like,
yeah.
Yeah, there's like a weird deviance that the rich have that the non-rich do not have. Like it's and it's basically like, what would you do if you couldn't get in trouble? You would go fucking hard, is what you would do.
Right.
And I think that was one of the things that Clueless does not have. It's like there's not like a deviancy of the ultra rich, you know, like everybody's pretty well meaning
where people can cross a line, and well, you and I would think of it as crossing a line. For them, it's not crossing a line.
It's just Tuesday.
Yeah.
Did you see Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
I did. That's what I was
all
thinking
right.
of.
It's an okay movie.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think it does really neat stuff with lighting. I think it's actually a really neat looking film. Like the way they solve the problem of lighting the characters' faces with the rave neckbands, I think is pretty interesting. But the sort of like class problems and that I think are like much more realistic than the class problems of Clueless. I mean, this is so stupid to even be talking about the class problems of Clueless. I feel like a fucking idiot for even bringing it up.
I think Ready or Not is another cartoonish version of maybe what you're getting. Have you seen Ready or Not?
I love Ready or Not.
It's really fun.
Yeah, the actress, she is going to be Tank Girl.
They're remaking Tank Girl.
Yeah, but she's Australian, so I'm all for it, you know?
Another thing that only occurs to me now about Clueless is the way that it's a self-improvement narrative. You know, again, being in school to become psychotherapist, definitely really focused on how people change and why people change and what are the motivating factors and all that. And of course, you know, we could easily have covered this as a self-help for nihilists sub episode, because that is essentially the narrative in this story. Is it's not really that she gets confronted on her privilege, but in a sense she does, right? She has this self-realization that she's clueless, but that accusation by Paul Rudd's character is, you know, that she's self-involved, and that is definitely tied to her just being this rich girl. And she goes on this quest for self-improvement, and part of that quest is using Ty as a surrogate. You know, she's got all these like self-help books that they're going to read together, but she's kind of trying to get Ty to read them, but it's obviously part of her own deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of delightful that she is able to improve herself in order to help others, or vice versa, helping others as a way to improve herself.
Yeah.
You know, and that definitely is tied to a lot of studies that show that a way to be happy is to invest yourself in other people.
Yeah.
Hedonism is a pretty short, it does not get you very far in improving your quality of life. It's pretty short-sighted, but investing in others is a much more solid foundation to build a happier life on.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about the way she pursues it, though, is what creates tension is that all of her altruistic efforts are rooted in self-interest.
Which Paul Rudd totally calls her out on.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's kind of funny that that's pretty much like the model of every Ayn Rand character is the self-interest.
Yes.
It should be self-motivated. So I guess this is like an anti-Ayn Rand thing.
But the thing is, that is true.
But it does lead to better outcomes for everybody.
Everybody, and including herself. She becomes happier. She becomes less self-involved, actually, even though it started with her just being selfish.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the tension of like, she's somebody that doesn't know what she wants, telling other people what they should want. And, you know, I think that's pretty interesting
And she's good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. But because I think that, you know, the whole idea of who wouldn't want to be smart, pretty, and rich, you know? And so she's like, I'm going to show you how to be smart, pretty, and rich. Oh, she can't really help her be rich, but like she's arrived on their doorstep. So she probably just assumes that. Like, I don't think she ever asks Ty about her family or how she's at the school or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, does it even explain like why she's there?
No, but I mean, there are Travis. That's the skateboarder.
Yeah.
Travis is, you know, another sort of like quote burnout character. He goes there.
But you don't know that he's not rich.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
We just sort of assume that everybody at that school is rich. It's safe to assume.
It's
not like Pretty in Pink, where Molly Ringwald is like maybe the only not rich kid. I can't remember that movie exactly.
I mean, you can almost make a case that like the world of Clueless, like, because you don't know the actual economic status of any of the characters. You see people's houses. You see the effects of richness. Like Paul Rudd's character is clearly wealthy, but he does not look wealthy. You know, he dresses like a college student or whatever. It's almost like a post-labor luxury communism through capitalism sort of like they just assume everybody's rich. It's like Star Trek. Everybody has the same level of money. Like there's never a point where Cher is richer than somebody else, and it comes into play. It's like everybody is at the same level.
Yeah.
But as long as everybody's rich, it's fun.
It's sort of
reverse City of God.
Jesus. I was going to say it's sort of 80s sitcom rules. Everybody's got enough space. Everybody's got enough food. Just keep the plot moving along.
Do we give any of the characters short shrift? We didn't really talk about any of the adult teacher characters, but that doesn't really matter.
I mean, Wallace Shawn.
Inconceivable. That's kind of all I got to say.
Well, it's funny. Like in high school, like I was a drama kid, and he wrote a play called Aunt Dan and Lemon, and I did a monologue from it as an audition piece. Like he's like a New York theater art world guy.
You really did go to this high school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I kind of like knew about Wallace Shawn before Princess Bride. Miss Geis is great. It's crazy that Julie Brown is the coach, like from MTV.
Downtown Julie Brown.
Yeah. That's so bizarre. I think that another thing that is kind of tied, I think, to what I was saying earlier about that there's not much plot. It's mostly just kind of characters. It's almost like, okay, if you liked the show Friends, the plot doesn't matter. It's more about hanging out with these people.
Yeah.
Clueless has that.
Yeah. Jim Jarmusch movies do.
Yeah.
Like nothing kind of happens. Like I fucking love Patterson. That's like one of my favorite movies I've seen in the last few years. Literally nothing happens. A guy drives a bus and writes some poetry and walks his dog. That's it.
Well, I guess I wasn't thinking quite that extreme of nothing happens. Oh, one thing I have to give mention to. Have you seen the movie Cold Comfort Farm?
Mm-mm.
This is one of Monique and my favorite movies. It was made for one of the British TV stations, not BBC, I don't believe. And somehow it got a commercial release in America. And it's basically a rich girl fixes up a bunch of people's lives movie. It's another parallel to Emma. It's great. I recommend it, everybody. It's a treat. But yeah, these characters are just fun to hang out with. Even when they're conniving, it's not like Curb Your Enthusiasm, everything. Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Wait, what's that show called? Everything? Always
Sunny in Philadelphia.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're not even that conniving. You know, like Amber and Cher are mean to each other. Kinda. You know? The thing that happens with Ty, with the boys at the mall. Like that's kind of the highest. Is that the highest stake thing that happens in this movie?
Yeah, and even then it's like the joke is it's like not high stakes. Like nothing really happens. Like she kind of leans over a banister and ooh.
And Christian is the savior.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I saw this, I didn't get the Billie Holiday joke because I had not heard of Billie Holiday at the time.
Yep.
And then later I was like, oh, now I get this joke.
Hilarious.
I wonder how many like kids of that age would have gotten that joke.
Not many.
But who knows?
All right. Thanks for listening to our mostly about Clueless episode on our sometimes horror podcast.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. I don't even know. Let's just do it.
Okay, let's do it.